Welcome back to the Fast Performance Baseball Podcast, where we're diving into part 4 of our enlightening 5-part series with Adam Sarancik. Today's episode shines a light on the essence of what it means to be a champion for life, focusing not just on the game of baseball, but the valuable life lessons it teaches. Adam shares his expertise on integrating life coaching within the sport, ensuring that the players not only excel on the field, but also carry these lessons into their lives beyond the diamond. We'll uncover the core principles of Adam's coaching philosophy and methodology, emphasizing effective communication between coaches and players. This dialogue is crucial for nurturing the right mental approach to both the game and life's changes. Additionally, Adam will address the delicate balance of incorporating technology in coaching, ensuring that while it remains a valuable tool, it doesn't overshadow the human elements of the sport. A particularly intriguing topic we will dive into is the nuanced decision-making process behind changing a player's delivery or swing. Adam will share insights into the factors that influence such a significant shift, highlighting the careful consideration that goes into these decisions to best support a player's development and success. Whether you're a player, coach, or just a fervent fan of baseball, this episode promises to offer profound insights into the transformative power of sports as a platform for lifelong learning and character building. Join us as we explore how to cultivate not only elite athletes, but true champions for life. Welcome back. We're going to get into our coaching champions for life players today, and we'll go over that philosophy and understand what it is it takes to, when we're actually coaching the players, on the field, and how we can create life lessons on the field as we're coaching them today. Correct?
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
All right. So we'll go get right off to a hot start. So one of the things we talked about off camera, and when we've had these discussions off the actual recording, is when it comes to coaching, how do you coach life lessons within the game that the players can carry beyond the field?
Right. Well, first, thanks again for the coaches and players that are listening, taking the time to make the extra effort to get better every day, apply that first to themselves. And thank you for everything that you're doing, putting out the content and working so hard to get great content to the audience out there. Yes. So I don't know if coaches have listened to the first 3 podcasts or not, but I think it's important when we're considering how are we going to teach, how are we going to mentor these athletes, on the field, kind of what the foundation for that is, what we're trying to do and why. My whole philosophy and my methodology is that we're not just training great competitors, we're training these young people to be people of high integrity and high character. We're trying to do that ourselves by mentoring them, which means we're trying to be great teachers, great role models. When we do that, we're great mentors. Our goal is to develop the self-esteem and self-confidence for these players so that they can go on and do great things in their lives. And more importantly, not only do we want to teach them, but we want to teach them how to teach others. Okay. So we're successful at what we do when we get them both individually and as a team to achieve things they didn't think were possible and believe in it enough to go out and help other people using the same things that we taught them. That's when you have a successful program. When it comes to teaching life lessons, I think we have to get, like you and I were discussing last time, right down to the bottom of what's the purpose of life? I mean, what are we really trying to teach here when we're teaching these lessons of integrity and high moral character and stuff? And I think we're trying to teach them how to be successful and significant. So what do we mean by being successful? What's successful? Successful is really 3 things. Number 1, determining what gifts God gave you. Number 2, which of those gifts do you feel passionate about enough to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day? And number 3, developing them to be better than anybody else into marketable skills, not just a hobby, but marketable skills. Okay. so that you can actually use these things to make a living wage living and feel passionate about getting up and doing what you do every single day. Significant, so that's successful. What does significant mean? Significant means that you are going to use those gifts to help other people, particularly the less fortunate, and to make the world a better place. Every place you go, it's going to be better because you were involved. Okay, so your life has been successful and significant when you've become a person of value. All right, you want to be a person of value, not just a person who is successful. All right, and that's the whole significant piece. From a team point of view, how do we do that? Well, just from a baseball point of view or a sports point of view, our goal every day is, regardless of whether we won or not, could we have beat our toughest competition today? All right. Doesn't matter if we won 15-2, 20-3. All right. Could we have beat our toughest competition today? But more importantly, from this Coaching Champions for Life philosophy, by the way we went about our business, were we inspirational to other people to be better in their lives in the way they go about their lives? All right. Those are the goals of the program. So we're trying to remember we coach people, not sports. It's the significance of the most significant thing is the quality of the person, not the player. And the reason we have to do this is that we've got to shift from strictly trying to win games and championships to trying to coach the person first, then the athlete, then the player. Okay. When we connect with, support, validate the person, we have the foundation to train the athlete. When we train the athlete to be the best they can be, we have the potential to be the best player. Okay. And the reason we do this is when you've done this for a long period of time, your players are going to thank you for what they've done, what you've done for them. And they're not going to thank you about the wins or losses. They're going to thank you for the impact that you had on their lives in making them a better person. Okay. Last time we generally referred to at least my outline, my template for a practice plan. Okay. So again, let me just set that out so we can set, well, how does coaching life lessons within the game for beyond the game fit into that? All right. I really think it's important that the players show up 15, 20 minutes early. You've got your practice plan posted with time segments. And within that practice plan, they see that you've proactively designed life lessons in the practice plan. You're going to have quotes at the beginning and end of practice that they need to memorize when they show up. They need to be ready to discuss them as a team. You're not going to lecture them. We're going to discuss them. All right. Then the first actual section of practice when it starts, and again, I'm summarizing here, is you're going to talk about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and you're going to set the stage by discussing a life lesson having to do with leadership, accountability, work ethic, attitude, overcoming adversity, all those things, so that you can use that foundation as you go through practice. All right. You're also going to have baseball IQ stuff in there that you're going to talk to them about. And it can be very specific things like the infield fly rule, or it could be very general things. I think coaches take for granted sometimes. They don't know that they don't understand that the players don't really know what it takes to be elite. I mean, they hear it talked about, bantered about all the time. What does it take to be elite? But they don't think they really know what kind of commitment goes into being elite. So part of baseball IQ might be, having them, and I give homework at the beginning that they're required to do between practices and come back and be able to demonstrate they've done their homework. Part of the homework might be, tell me about the best MLB player at your position and why do they consider that player the best, getting an idea of what it takes to be elite. Then the next section goes into athleticism. We talked about that last time. We're talking about dynamic movement. We're talking about priming the central nervous system and getting adaptations going. We're talking about moving in all planes of motion. And then in addition, we're setting the foundation for as the practice is going to progress by doing explosive steps in the athleticism piece that we're going to use in the baseball skills. And then we're getting into actual baseball steps We're starting to practice them, or, right then and there. Then we're going into some type of physical conditioning, whether it's ab core, whether it's teaching players how to do the basics of push, pull, squat, hinge, and carry. At a young age, it can be just body weight or whatever, but you got some kind of physical conditioning piece. Then we go into base running, and this is where I also talk about a lot of my baseball IQ stuff, because I want to get them to think and do at the same time. But I think base running is really important, but we don't, again, just talk about it or train it by itself. It's going to relate to that end of the practice game simulation or scrimmage. So if we're working on relays, say, for example, we're at the end of the practice, we're going to test and have a game simulation about relays. When we're doing base running, we're working on routes from home to second. We're working on routes from second to home. We're working on the first base runner reading the relay throw to decide whether they're going to, take off to second base or have to hold it first. We're talking about the relay person, making sure they're throwing through the relay guy, faking in the cut, etc. So we're doing it for a purpose, and it's a building one stage, one part of practice builds upon another for a specific purpose. All right. Then we have our throwing and receiving progression. This isn't just catch play. We are actually training skills to throw better and to throw for a specific purpose related to our position. So I put pitchers with catchers, corner infielders with corner infielders, middle infielders with middle infielders, and outfielders with outfielders. We're on the way out of the long toss. We're working on mechanics and our different types of throws mechanically. On the way in, we're working on specific throws to our position. And yes, eventually we'll put infielders with outfielders if we're working on relays or whatever. But we're incorporating bags for working on force play mechanics, tag mechanics, and all the throws that go along with our positions every single day. All right. And then position fundamentals come after that. So we've laid a foundation athletically and baseball wise to now actually go and work on our baseball stuff. All right. And so we're working on position fundamentals. And then after that, we're going to go into a hitting progression. And notice again, I said it's a hitting progression. So we're not just working on getting cuts in or getting reps in or whatever. So at the youngest ages, we're working on, let's just say at the very youngest ages, we'll have 3 tees set up and short toss stage set up. At the first tee, they may be working on getting into the batter's box property, where to stand, how far away to stand. The second station, we're working on the proper grip and the hands and arms position. Third station, we're working on weight transfer. And then those that are have done and have gotten proficient at that, at least to the extent we can expect them at the stage that we're practicing at, they get to go and do something in a game like for the fourth station. It may be, short toss over the line or short toss 100 or whatever. But there's a no-go progression at each stage where they're loading in, and if they are doing the one skill that we're working on correctly, it's go, and they're free to hit. And then the other thing that's really, really, really important is whatever process they're going to use in the game, they use it at every single station, okay? So if there's a load, there's a stride, an internal rotation, there's a track, they do it whether they're doing it off the tee, off the front toss, off a machine, off a live pitching, whatever. They have to not just stare at a ball on a tee or being tossed to them. They have to look out at a pitcher and go through the same process. All right, after hitting progression comes team defense. So we're taking everything we've worked on up to them, and we're going to put it in a defensive situation, and we're going to emphasize defense. So that's where we're actually work on the relays, etc. If we're working on, say, relays for our end of the game, end of the practice scrimmage or game sim, and then we're going to have that actual game simulation or scrimmage. And the important thing there is the coaches are monitoring safety. They're monitoring that the game is moving quickly, but they're not doing any coaching. They are simply listening and watching to see, have the players learn what I thought we taught them? How good was my coaching? and what adjustments do I need to make. After that is another physical conditioning piece, maybe sprints, maybe continuous base running for the younger ages. They learn how to run the bases and get some conditioning. After that, we tear down, dress down the field. If there's anything left to be done, it typically should be done as we go along. And then finally, we recap everything. It's really important that, kind of the old thing, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. But you want feedback from them about what they've learned about everything in every stage. And then last, you're going to discuss with them that life lesson quote, or maybe you have a guest speaker, or maybe you role play, maybe you have an acronym for a life lesson that they're going to take with them to try to be better people. Okay, that's really important. There are other things that go along with that last section than that, but I'll leave it at that. So the approach, Cole, is, all right, so this is what I'm going to plan to do. How do I program this? How do I set this up specifically to, get these lessons across? If I'm not going to just use the game of baseball and overcoming adversity for teaching them this implicitly, how am I going to explicitly design my practice plan to do this? Well, the first thing you start with is your goals. I mean, every year you should sit down and have a person, athlete, player list, including baseball IQ stuff, of what it is I hope to teach them. Okay, so you look at that list and say, okay, we're the first week of practice. What is it that I want to teach them about being a better person? Okay, let's just say at the very, very youngest levels, I want to be able to teach them how to be appreciative as a son or daughter. I want them to be able to go home and or go after practice and thank mom and dad for driving them to the game. I want them to thank the coaches for coaching them. I want them to be able to show up every day and ask the coaches, what can I do to help set up at the end of practice? What can I do to help tear down? How do I give a proper handshake? All right. How do I give a proper high five? How do I support a teammate, not just on the field, but while I'm on the bench? Okay. So those are just basic things. All right. You take one of those or whatever. What do I want to make sure that they learn this week? All right. And then you think, okay, today, what am I going to teach it? And you actually program that in to the practice plan. Okay. Today, we're going to make sure when they show up that they know how to give a good handshake, that they understand that please and thank you is always welcome, or whatever. We're actually going to teach that to them. All right. We're going to talk about why that's important. We're going to relate it to their home life. And then, at the end, we're going to give them specific homework. We're going to say, tonight I want you to go home and I want you to volunteer to do at least one thing to help make dinner. I want you to volunteer over and above what you're required to do to clean up after dinner. I want you to help your sister or brother read for half an hour if they're younger than you. I want you to do something as an extra effort to be a better son or brother. Okay. I think that people underestimate the value and the power of words. All right. So I wrote a book, Takeaway Quotes for Champions for Life. And I really think that these quotes, again, the book has stuff for coaches. Matter of fact, if the coaches read and live by every quote in that chapter on developing champion for life coaches, I think they'll be a really good coach. It's almost like an instruction manual on how to go about it. But as coaches, and then all the aspects of playing, pitching, defense, hitting. But again, there's quotes in there on sense of humor and all the aspects of being a person of high moral character and integrity. But I think that people don't really understand that players really enjoy talking about these quotes and how they impact their lives. And I think they assume a lot of times that players know a lot more about life and some of these life skills than they really do. You're kind of surprised. They don't really know, what's going on. So having to, bring this out in a proactive manner just has so many benefits. Well, I get questions from coaches, Cole, all the time, like, well, what do I talk about? What is it that specifically I should focus in on? Well, as a general rule, Cole, you and I know that the issues are the same every year. There's no mystery what needs to be discussed from a sport point of view or otherwise. In sports, you know what's going to come up. There are going to be injuries. There's going to be bad weather. There's going to be poor playing conditions, bad calls by the officials, disputes about playing time. Um, you're going to have ineligibility in high school with players that are not getting good grades. You're going to have bad language. You're going to have bad attitudes. You're going to have helicopter parents. Um, you're going to disrespect from other teams. These come up every year. All right. Well, let's proactively talk about how we're going to deal with them, how we can deal with them properly. When it comes to the person and themselves, like we talked about, we've got attitude, work ethic, leadership, accountability, and all the selves, right? Self-confidence, self-esteem, self-advocacy, self-awareness, self-image, self-control, all of these things, character, integrity. If you're a faith person, spirituality, prayer, academics, and careers, all of these things, are very, very important. Maybe one of the most important categories to discuss with players these days, because they're so tech oriented, is relationships. They're not really relationship people as much as prior generations because they're so into their devices. So again, we know these things that come up. Peer pressure, huge, right? For particularly middle school and high school. Bullying, huge topic. Envy, the media. If you got a high school team that's successful, knowing how to handle questions from the media, positive affirmations to teammates. You would be surprised. Players nowadays, they don't understand how to give a legitimate compliment, how to support a teammate when they're up or down. Okay. And then, a category that's delicate, but, quite frankly necessary for middle and high school players is the temptations, smoking, drugs, sex, alcohol. You got to know how to bring that up and deal with it proactively, or you're going to have, issues that, shouldn't be there. And yet they crop up every year. So let me give one other thing I want to point out. A lot of I even wrote an article recently on this that health in sports begins with, health in sports begins with mental health. All right, good health in sports begins with mental health. There's been a lot of discussion, rightfully so, and these kids have gone through a particularly tough time when it comes to their mental health and staying grounded or whatever. So I think coaches got to be careful. Never assume mental stability from athletic ability. Okay. Just because a kid's a great player doesn't mean he's got it all together. And sometimes getting into these life lesson discussions really kind of let you know that maybe not everything is okay with this player. Maybe he is struggling personally, emotionally, at home, or otherwise in his life. And that's why you can't just lecture. You've got to try to bring it out of them with discussions and role plays and things like that. A lot will be illustrated and exemplified to you about that person. So let me end by giving you a specific example of, how you can take something that happens in baseball all the time and relate it to something in their lives as students. Okay. So let's just use this one example. And let me set it up by saying this. In baseball, we know we train, or should train, preparation, anticipation, reaction, and action. Okay? So preparation, who's the pitcher we're facing? What are his strengths, weaknesses, tendencies, and tells? Anticipation is, okay, we've got a game situation here. We've got this pitcher against this hitter with this score. We're going to shift our defense or focus our approach as a hitter this way. We're going to anticipate and expect the ball being hit to us. So preparation, anticipation. Reaction, all right, we're going to have to react to the ball, either thrown, hit, or pitched to us. And then action, how we're going to act, all right? So let's take that framework and apply it to the situation in baseball where we're a cleanup hitter and we got bases loaded. And as happens many, many times throughout the season, we get a bad call on strike 3 where we strike out. Okay, happens all the time. All right, okay, so we need to talk about that proactively, and we need to say, okay, from a preparation anticipation, what's the content and the context? How does this come up? And who is involved? So your whole team's watching you, and they're going to feed off what you do and how you react. The fans are watching, and they're all hyped up for the situation. Bases loaded, our cleanup hitter up. They're going to react and feed off what you do. And then your own reaction and action is going to affect how you feel too. All right. So you set it up that way. Then you have to specifically, what are the consequences for how you could react? All right. If you make, a lot of histrionics with your facial expressions, arms expressions, one thing happens. If you throw your bat down or you throw your helmet down, either there or in the dugout, you got a whole nother set of consequences that are going to happen, right? And the more negative your reaction is, the more you're going to take your team sideways, all right? And the worse you're going to feel. So you're going to take your fans sideways, you're going to take your team sideways. Everything's going to go sideways, including your attitude. And they're going to be distracted from getting back on track, getting out on the field and play good defense. All right. So then there's the action piece. All right. So when I get back to the dugout, what are my options? Okay. My coaches, my teammates, and myself, we could remind ourselves that that was strike 3. What happened on the first 2 strikes? Okay. That's why they give you 3 strikes. We need to refocus on going out onto the field and playing better defense. We got to take accountability for everything that we've done, and we got to make sure that we understand it's not just about us, it's about the team. All right. So that's the baseball piece. Okay. That's the baseball piece. So let's relate that same situation to something that happens every year in school. Okay. So you can role play this. You can just discuss and talk about it. The situation at school, that's an easy analogy that happens all the time, is we take tests in school. Middle schoolers, high schoolers take tests in school all the time that are unfair, either because it was a pop quiz, we didn't know it was coming, or it's something that we were tested on and we didn't really discuss that much in class, or the emphasis on the test was completely different than what we spend talking about in class. So just like the bad call by the umpire, it's like, where did this come from? That's not even fair. Okay. So you're trying to set the context again. You failed this pop quiz. You did poorly on the test. And we know they're going to happen every year. Just like the bad call by the umpire, we know these things are going to happen. So we've got to be prepared to handle them. All right. So again, that's the preparation, anticipation. The reaction to them, same thing. We can get angry with the teacher, which is going to, hurt our standing in the class. Not only then, but going forward. Our teammates, our classmates are going to look how we reacted to the unfair test, and they're going to feed off of it and maybe tank the teacher's opinion of who we are and how we feel about the class, which is going to hurt us going forward, just like the umpire if we show up the umpire. So we have to be very careful about our reaction. And then action. How are we going to act? What are we going to tell ourselves? Just like after we strike out, what are we going to tell ourselves we could do differently then as we're reacting to it and in the future? All right. So if I'm calm and I send a message to the teacher like, okay, this isn't the end of the world. We're going to learn from this. All right. We earn some respect with the teacher. If I think about what led up to that, maybe I can study more often and not just at the last minute. Maybe I can go in before we know a test is going to happen and ask the teacher, what is likely to be on the exam, or, have I covered everything that I should have covered in preparing for the exam? Maybe I can even talk to other students before I even take the class about this teacher's um, habits about pop quizzes and testing, and whether this is something this teacher does a lot. Maybe I don't even want to take this teacher if I have a chance to not take this teacher if it's an elective. So maybe I can overcome it that way. All right. So there's different things that I can do leading up to and as an action after it happens to make sure it doesn't happen again, and I react, appropriately. So that's a specific example. And then I think the last piece or pieces that I would say is for coaches to remember that service is a huge deal in life. That's a significant piece, making sure that you leave the world a better place. There's lots of service opportunities out there for coaches to have their players have the message that the world involves them, but isn't about them. So miracle or challenger leagues, I think, are important. Older kids can visit children's hospitals, do community work projects. You can gather baseball equipment for organizations. The ABCA, the American Baseball Coaches Association, has their Turn 2 for Youth program where they will accept goods. We did in high school, we gathered baseball equipment for a organizational called GRIP International, GRIP, GRIP International. You can, do cleanups of city parks. You can do raise awareness campaigns. You can help promote and work at a school event. And older kids, I really like the book Chop Wood, Carry Water by Joshua Metcalf. I think that's a great book to read as a team and discuss it. There's a lot of great life lessons in there. So these are just some of the things that I think that players and teams can do to send a message that it's more about this. Life is more than just about winning games with our teams, more about the team. At the high school level, Cole, another thing is baseball programs sometimes don't get the attendance that other programs do, the football program, basketball program, and they wonder why. Well, if they start going to the cheerleading competitions and the band competitions and other teams events at school, you'll find out that they'll reciprocate and start coming to yours. So again, trying to get them to understand, if people want to take me seriously, I need to first show them that I care about them and take them seriously. Okay. So I hope that helped. I know that was a lot, but I hope I laid a foundation for how that's done in a baseball context, and then specifically how you can take something in baseball and relate it to something in school.
No, for sure. I think that's really good. It was a really good foundation you set. We are halfway through this enlightening episode of the Fast Performance Baseball Podcast, where we're diving into the core of what it means to not be just a good player on the field, but a champion in life. We hope the conversation with our guest Adam Sarancik is inspiring you to think about baseball in a deeper, more holistic way, connecting life lessons, communication, and the mental approach to both the game and everyday challenges. If you're finding value in these insights and stories, we encourage you to support our journey together. Like this episode, share it with your peers, coaches, family, and anyone who believes in the transformative power of sports. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Your engagement helps us continue to bring you compelling content that goes beyond the game, touching on the essential skills and philosophies needed for success in life. Stay tuned for the second half of our discussion, where we will explore even more about balancing technology in coaching and the nuanced decision-making behind changing a pitcher's delivery and a hitter's swing. Your support means the world to us and to the community we're building. Let's dive back in. Going back to our, we've laid out the methodology, we've laid out the way we define the life lessons, but the next piece is communicating those life lessons. So what are your keys to teaching the philosophy and the methodology and ensuring good communication between coaches and players to make sure that this methodology and this philosophy is being presented in the correct way? That way we can foster good mental approaches to the field and into life.
I think that coaches work so hard at developing their practice plans, gathering all this information from a number of resources as well as their years of experience. They're so anxious to impart thousands and thousands of details to their players that sometimes they're too quick in not trying to empathize with who these players are, how their daily lives are, how they think, how they learn. They don't realize that their players, or don't, it doesn't impact them enough that their players basically are carrying their phone with them 99% of the day, just scrolling and reading headlines, and their attention spans are not very long, that they're not auditory learners, they're visual and kinesthetic learners, that they're multitasking. Even when they appear to be staring you in the face, they're thinking about 4 other things. So I think the first thing the coaches need to do is slow down and remember that old saying, when things aren't going right, look in the mirror with honest intent. You've got to remember that I need to challenge my methodology. The other thing that happens that players today are not as good at dealing with is that intensity that goes along with sports and competition. They don't get maybe as much angst and heightened, atmosphere, or heightened vibe in their lives. So coaches have to remember that they got to be very careful letting their frustration grow into anger. I have a saying that I think is really, really important for coaches, maybe a little old school, to remember that anger is always about the person who's angry and never about the person at whom the anger is directed. All right. So I think you got to be very careful, and your assistant coaches need to monitor your tone of voice and how you're really coming off to these players, and really, again, examine yourself first. It's like, I don't need to get angry here. I can make my point another way. Why is this coming out that way? And how can I do better? All right. Coaches, in looking at themselves, have to remember that they may have 20 years experience, but if they haven't gotten better every day, they really don't have 20 years experience. They've got 1 year experience 20 times. So the saying of get better every day applies to the coaching first. I think, again, before you communicate, you have to realize that we coach people, not sports. We got to make the connections with the players first. We have to get to know them, what's going on in their lives, how they think, how they learn, so that we can approach it that way and not just my way. And they're all different, right? So we've got to individualize this. We've got to make sure that we know that not every player learns the same. Not every player may be hearing and interpreting what I'm saying the same way. So I think we have to take a step back and really look at things from their point of view. The other thing that I don't think coaches give enough impact to is the power of what they don't say and don't do. All right. So some of that I've referred to already. Your tone of voice, your body language, your spatial distancing, all of these nonverbal things have a huge impact on what they see and what they hear. And I don't think coaches themselves are really aware, especially adults to very young players, that just the height difference alone is very intimidating. And I don't think they factor that in. I recall, Cole, early on in my career, I was kind of amped up before a game, and I was using my competitor's tone of voice that you and I and any high school player on up has grown to become accustomed to. We know that that's just getting ready to compete, right? we're just amped. We're ready to compete, and things are elevated and heightened in our body language and in our tone of voice. My players were looking at me like, is he mad at us? Did we do something wrong? And I had to look at them and say, oh my word, they think I'm angry here right now. I'm just getting ready to compete. From the time, I've learned this from the time I was an athlete and a competitor throughout my coaching career. So I had to explain to them that I'm not angry with them. This is just how, when we get to the game, and it's let's go time. This is how, we act and how we talk. It's not, and I had to actually explain that to them. And once I did, you could almost see it in their faces, like, oh, okay, that's cool. I didn't realize that, that's what this is about. But I think these kind of nonverbal things get overlooked sometimes, and are really, really, really important. Um, Other things that what you don't say or don't do can be really helpful. We've mentioned before. I just want to emphasize it again. I think too many coaches wonder why their teams don't play as well as they practiced. I thought we went over this. I thought we were good at doing this, and they get to the game, they don't compete very well. They don't have enough competitions at every phase of practice to where their players are competing. And secondly, that end of the game scrimmage or game simulation, they're doing too much coaching. They're not just being silent and watching how their teams played. So again, another example of what you don't say or do can be very, very powerful. I think when it comes to communicating, sometimes coaches jump right to all the time rewarding the result, the good throw, the good hit, or whatever, and they're not rewarding the process. So players get to learn that, well, I'm really nothing. I'm really no good unless I got a base hit, unless I made a great play. They're not appreciating all the details that went into doing those things. I mean, you and I know that a successful at bat, yes, is a base hit to advance a runner or knock a runner in. But you know what? It's also very, very positive if you just have hard contact. We keep track of hard contact at bats. So I think coaches have to be very, very careful to emphasize, train, and reward the process. I think they need to reward the life skills that we're trying to teach, not just the baseball skills, not just the sports skills. Okay. I think coaches make a mistake in the way they teach players in always going to what they did wrong. I think that they have to understand that a player's trying to build their self-esteem and their self-worth. All right. And sometimes no one's harder on the player than the players themselves. So a great way to go about teaching is, okay, you tell me what you did right. Okay. Or instead of telling the player what they did wrong all the time, mention first the 4 or 5, however many things they did right. That builds a self-esteem and a self-confidence. Like, okay, I'm not terrible just because I didn't get the base hit. I also did a lot of things right. I'm not a terrible pitcher because I gave up a hit or a bomb. I actually attacked the zone and threw my best pitch in that situation. And okay, I didn't win that battle, but you know what? There's a lot to be said for being confident and going for it. My best against your best, that kind of thing. They have to remember that motivation is caught, not taught. All right, so you got to be the vibe. You've got to set the example, set the tone of the positivity. I mean, I go to a lot of baseball practice. All I hear is coaches being negative and negative and negative and negative, right? And so the players come out thinking that that's how we should act. We should constantly think less of ourselves and constantly criticize ourselves. Yeah, we want to get better every day, but it doesn't mean we're terrible in the process. Okay, we're doing a lot of things right, and yet you never hear the coaches say that. So the ratio of positive to negative need to be 99-1. You need to make sure that you give positive things and praise publicly and share the constructive criticism stuff privately. Okay. You got to make sure that it's always about the play, what you're having to say in a constructive way, never about the player. You've got to make sure that if something is said in confidence in a team meeting or 1v1 with a player, that confidence is never breached. Okay. You got to respect team confidences and player confidences. Coaches are constantly preaching, stay present, stay positive, and yet they're always coaching backwards. They're always telling a player what they should have done. Okay. Well, save this should have done, especially in games, to between innings or at the next practice. If you're going to ask them to stay present, stay positive, you need to stay present and stay positive. You need to keep them in the moment, this pitch, this moment. Sometimes I don't think coaches realize that there's a contradiction, there's a hypocrisy going on there. All right. They're constantly yelling out, hey, you should have done this, you should have done that. Well, that's not what's coming up in the next situation. Let's keep them on task. Talking about, the next play, the next pitch. One of the things I learned from John Wooden, Cole, that was kind of very interesting, and when I started to watch practices, really was amazing that, he's really right. Even the best coaches, or the most likable coaches, spend a lot of time on praise or discipline, setting boundaries or whatever. And it's not like you don't want to do that at all. But Coach Wooden had a philosophy that 85% of your time should be on teaching, not praising or disciplining. It should be on teaching. Because what builds the self-confidence and self-esteem of a player most is believing that I'm getting better. All right. So Coach Wooden used to say, be a master teacher. Be really good at teaching what you're trying to get them to understand and adopt. And that will take care of a lot of your, discipline problems, because they see that they're improving. So you say, master teaching what you know before you expand what you know. There's so much information out there, so many things out there that people are, we're trying to get our players to understand. And as technology is used, we're trying to, impart to them that sometimes we're not very good at teaching it. We don't realize that, again, telling is not teaching. So we need to be better at teaching what they want them to learn. And then just, relating what we're teaching to life in general, I think it's really important that we teach them a few very, very important life skills. Number one, you know what? This baseball game or this baseball season, it's a journey, just part of a journey of life. This is not a destination. This is not the end all be all. Okay. That you are learning things here that you're going to use for later on in your life. Okay. So we need to teach them that this is a journey, not a destination, that the good that you're doing here, you're going to be able to use later on when in life. So you're going to learn how to handle adversity here. So you'll learn how to handle adversity there. I think we need to, as I mentioned before, they're connected to their devices. They're constantly scrolling and getting information, but they're not relationship people. So I think we need to specifically teach them how to listen. All right, listening is a skill that needs to be taught. There's 4 very, very important components to listening. First of all, it really helps if you're still. Be still. Okay, don't try to give instructions to a team and players that are moving around. Right. Number 2, you need to have direct eye contact. Right. You don't want to be looking somewhere else, especially this generation. They're easily distracted. Right. Number 3, separation helps. If they're too close to another player, sometimes it's too easy to get distracted by that player. And number 4, they need to repeat out loud, or at least in their head, what they've heard. That really helps reinforce the message that you're trying to get across to them. So teaching them how to listen. The other thing is, when you're teaching them life lessons using quotes and acronyms and role plays and stuff, I think it causes them to focus even harder, because it's like, this is more than about baseball. This is about life, and I really care about this. This is interesting to me. The coach is trying to get to know me outside of this sport and what's happening with my life. So I want to listen to him because he actually cares about me. Okay. So I think this whole life and skill piece, this whole, getting to know the person and coaching the person, is, I think, helps the communication piece, as well. Let's see, a couple other things we'll end on. Couple of things. Number one, this is really important. All the way up from youth baseball, players get confused, and it can really cause them a lot of very deep problems. They do not understand the difference of being responsible to somebody, their parents, their family, their team, and responsible for them. And we may have touched on this in another podcast, but I think it's worth repeating here with regard to communication. It's really important that players understand that, yes, you need to make responsible decisions in your life. How you act and what you do impacts your reputation and your family's reputation. But you are responsible to them for that. You're not responsible for how they feel. If you lost the game and that upsets them and ruins their day, well, that's on them. It's not on you. You're not responsible for their happiness. You're not responsible for how they feel. And that's a really, really important distinction. Okay. So that's from the coaching point of view, from the coach's point of view. I have a few things that I would like to relate, because communication is a two-way street. I'd like to relate a few things from the player's point of view. Some of these we've talked about before, but I think if we're going to communicate, the players have to get some things that are very important too to make this work. All right, it's not all on us. They have to do their part. They have to be good listeners. They have to want to listen. All right. I think the first thing they need to realize is you can't become on the field or on the mound. You're a pitching coach. You can't become on the field or on the mound what you're not in life. Okay. If you're not detail oriented into all the details of things as a student and at home, and the way you go about your business at home, you're not going to magically flip a switch and be that on the field in your sport. All right. Who you are is who you are. Okay. You can get better. You can improve, but you can't have one set of habits and one set of systems or lack of systems at home and in your personal life and expect to do everything we are going to expect you to do here. You have to have a teachable spirit. You have to come here and want to get better. Okay. You have to want to get better every day. You have to want to listen and learn and to commit to the process. That's called a teachable spirit. That's on you. You have to come here doing that. You have to have a growth mindset. All right. Well, I'm going to help you with it. I'm going to try to keep my comments positive 99-1. I'm going to teach you to appreciate all the good that you do, but you have to understand and learn to adopt the philosophy that failure is a necessary and important part of progress. Okay. You got to learn how to adapt to that. I think they have to know and be reinforced, because their home lives are tough. They have to know that no matter the outcome of that inning, of that game, of this season, you're loved. You're loved by your coaches. You're loved by your teammates. You're loved by your family. That who you are as a person has no relationship to the outcome of a game. None, zero. How you react to it and how we react to it indicates that, but the score doesn't. Okay. So this is something that that it has nothing to do with whether you're a good person and whether you're loved. You are. Similarly, you have talents and gifts and parts of who you are that make you unique and special, that transcend sports. Okay. So you don't have to be the best player on this team to be the best orthopedic surgeon when you grow up. All right. You're going to use these life lessons to use those. So your gifts and what you do with these life lessons are going to transcend this game, this season, and this sport. And in doing that, it's going to really be a good idea if you choose your friends wisely. You may not be able to choose your family, but you can choose your friends. Choose your friends wisely. And if you're going to go to college, if that's necessary for your career, you better choose that college first as if you were not an athlete. Okay? If your career ended tomorrow, Is this going to be the right place for you to get the education for the career choices that you want to be? All right. Um, because these players are not relationship people, one of the things that I think they struggle with the most that I mentioned before is how to give a compliment and how to hold a teammate accountable for um, doing what we expect to do, our culture, our way. They don't really know how to hold somebody accountable, especially when it comes to nonverbal skills. Um, if you're playing, if you're in your throwing and receiving progression, and you're looking across trying to hold somebody accountable for receiving properly, or directing their throw properly, you don't always have to call them out. You can just hold up your elbow and indicate, this, and they'll know when they're not paying attention to their glove side mechanics. They'll be reminded. So I think you have to actively teach them about nonverbal cues. This is another thing that coaches need to do. This whole nonverbal thing, they're not very good at. Communication etiquette, they're not very good at. But players have to be taught how to hold their teammates accountable as well. Of course, the one that gets talked about a lot, is so very, very important that we teach through competition, is controlling what you can control and adapting to what you can't. That's really, really huge. Will help your communication with them. Having mistake rituals, I think, are really, really important, because players can shut down because they've made a mistake and they don't have an actual established ritual to get out of it, so that they can get back to be positive and now open up their mind to receiving the communication that you have. So, I guess I mentioned this before. If we kicked the ball in the infield, the first thing we did was turn to the outfield, took a deep breath, wiped our foot on the ground as if to wipe it away. We turned around and we said something positive to somebody else. Okay, turned it right back to something positive, get our mind off us, get it back on the team. So that was one mistake ritual we had. But I think those things are really, really important. Two really important things to end on. Number one, when you're training players, make sure you chase one rabbit at a time. Okay. If you chase two, they both get away. Work on one thing at a time and get better at that, and then move on to something else. That's going to really help, not necessarily with communication, but the whole positive mental piece. And then finally, maybe the most important thing, the thing that I always emphasize and I end every baseball season with, and I'll give a very practical tip on how to do this, is I always talk about happiness and how you get joy out of life and how do you be happy out of life. And I always tell my players and try to help them learn this, that happiness is not derived by what happens to you. Okay. Happiness is derived from what you choose to remember happened. Okay. So fill your life every day with a choice to remember the good things and the happy things. So how does that relate to communication and to baseball? Well, every day I end my end of the practice session with the same thing. I have each player tell me what they're going to take home with them. I want them to take home with them their best catch, their best throw, their best hit. That's what I want them to take home with them. All right. It'll make them a better player. And by the way, scientifically, it's proven that when you're injured, if you can replay in your mind all of your positive attributes, you will come back a lot quicker to a much higher level. But just generally keeping positive about yourself and who you are. If, as a player, if you take home every day my best swing, every day my best throw, every day my best pitch, every day my best catch, whatever, and that's what you're going to choose to remember, you will be a better player. You will absolutely be a better player and a happier person. And long term in life, that's just a really, really good life skill that we want our players to have. Okay?
So moving on to the next piece, like you mentioned a lot, especially with younger guys, is there's this big emphasis on the technology now, right? And how are we training guys with technology? So how do you balance in your coaching using technology, whether that's Rhapsody, TrackMan, Blast Motion, Hit Tracks, et cetera, et cetera. We all know the different pieces of technology. But how do you coach without over relying on the technology?
Yeah, really, really important. I use the example of my youngest grandson. I mean, he wasn't very fluent at 2 years old in the way he spoke, but I guarantee you he was very fluent in the way he used his iPad. Okay. They learn a piece of technology, how to use an iPad, for example, long before they can speak, maybe even before they can even run. All right. So technology is a doggone important piece to their lives. Matter of fact, I don't know if a lot of people know it or not, but there's going to be a thing now, or there already is coming into play called digital twins. A digital twin is something that will, through technology, help to predict and prevent injury to you. All right. So you'll actually have a digital twin out there, and athletes are starting to use this a lot to predict injury. And in pitching, they're going to use this a lot too. So predicting and preventing injury, digital twins. Um, and then, yeah, now in baseball, as you mentioned, Cole, we've got so many things out there with metrics and analytics and all these programs to microanalyze everything a player does, how they move and how they throw and how they hit or whatever. And especially for this generation, especially for older kids, this is really cool. They love this stuff. They eat it up. Now, you don't always have to have this to develop the player. There's plenty of things that you can teach a player that don't require a fancy, piece of technology or a program. But at the older level, probably middle school on up, you may not need it to develop them, but you're probably going to need it to connect with them. Players are going to be motivated by seeing something on technology about where they're at and how they're improving. But don't be dissuaded if you don't know that. If you're a youth coach, a dad that is not into this world, there's a ton of stuff that you can teach them, as we always have, including the mental approach to the game. All right. But at some point, yeah, you probably have to have a hit tracks tournament or, get into some analytic program, as you say, TrackMan, Repsode, or whatever. But I think nowadays there's so many companies out there that are pushing these products and the use of these products that they're kind of forgetting that this generation, while yes, they are motivated by results in these programs, there's a whole piece, that social relationship piece and understanding human emotion and communication, that they need maybe even more, especially during the game. So they may overuse technology because it's kind of fun and it's kind of, the thing to do, and they know the players really enjoy it. And yet when things fall apart, say out on the mound, oh, wait a minute, I can't run out with a piece of technology to cure this. Okay. So pitcher's out on the mound and things aren't going well, not throwing strikes, not commanding pitches the way he does. If it's in the middle of a training session, you can get out your favorite program and you can analyze it top, bottom, in and out, right? But out on the mound, you realize, I guess I've never really taught him how to feel when the grip is not just right. Oh yeah, I really haven't emphasized from an athleticism point of view how to sync up his upper and lower body, and he's not feeling like it's out of sync. He's not realizing and doesn't know how to adapt to his body being out of sync. All right, so that's not something I can, in the middle of a game, I can cure by pointing to a program. He's got to feel it. And then, like we said, there's the whole mental side of it, the lost art of pitching. I mean, is there any doubt Greg Maddux would be just as effective today as he was back in his day? If players know who that is, if not, search him up. But, I mean, there's an art to pitching. Have we taught the art of pitching, or are we relying strictly on, the analytics to get him to throw harder? So I think that's really, really important too. Let me relate a story. This is probably off on the theoretical, but it's a very important point. There's a woman by the name of Brené Brown who works a lot with youth and with leadership, and she wrote a book called Dare to Dream or Dare to Lead. Sorry, Dare to Lead. And in that book, she talks about working with millennials and younger people and trying to communicate with them and understand who they are and how they think, and more importantly, how they feel. And what she said was, she actually quoted one of her people that she thought was typical of almost all of what she deals with. She said, this person said, I've never learned about emotions or how to talk openly about failure. Okay. And I've never seen it modeled for me in my life. When you're used to using technology for everything, this person said, these face-to-face conversations are awkward and they feel so intense. So I don't know how to deal with them. All right. So she's saying this whole relationship piece is something very foreign to them. So when things aren't going well for them out on the field, they really don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to communicate to their players, to their teammates about how to get over something, how to move past something. They don't understand, like I say, verbal versus nonverbal cues. They don't even understand group dynamics. I mean, they're so into what they do and how they do it and looking at devices, they don't even understand group dynamics. The other thing that's really, really important in sports and for sure in baseball is the fact that it's unpredictable. And young kids today, they kind of get into a pattern and only feel comfortable with things that are predictable, things that they can get very quickly because they're so impulse driven. So this whole piece of, having to adjust at something they didn't expect, something random, they don't know how to deal with. So this whole randomization in training is so important in everything you're teaching them, hitting, fielding, throwing, making sure that you're constantly training reaction as well as action, changing the environment, even having them compete in bad weather so that they don't always think that everything has to be perfect for them to be able to do well and to perform well. The other thing that our coaches need to realize is these guys play a lot of computer games. You know this. And a lot of these computer games are really, really, really intense, right? They're all about killing or being killed. Everything is being blown up. And so they're very, very intense. So many times I don't think coaches realize for something to register on the emotion of a young person, it has to be really, 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 really intense. And sometimes the normal human emotion of just not feeling your best or, things not going well, it doesn't even register them. So they may not even realize how bad a teammate feels about making that error or striking out or whatever, because nobody got killed. Okay. So it's not that intense. So it doesn't even register on them. I think coaches sometimes on the other end of the spectrum, they go and try to rescue their players too quickly. They try to take them off the mound when things aren't going well too quickly. They're trying to take them out of the game when things don't go well. They're not letting the players fail. They're not letting the players experience adversity to any great extent. So they're not having an opportunity to see how they're dealing with it, and so that they can coach them on how to do it better. They're quick to try to protect them from things going bad. All right, he made a couple of bad pitches. He's given up a run or two. Let's don't pull him. Be brave enough to lose. At the youth level, it's not that important. Let him out there. Let him struggle. Let him finish the inning. He might give up 4, 5, 6 runs. Let it happen. All right. Same thing with, I think I told that story about the kid at the league championship game. I mean, he had bunted way, way too much that season. Let him hit. Okay, he might strike out. He might hit into a double play. Let him hit away. Let's see what happens. And if things don't go well, see how he deals with it. If he strikes out, if he hits into a double play, if he doesn't get the job done, don't come at him about what he should have done. Slow down and look at his reaction. Help him with staying positive and how he can grow from it. And you'll earn his respect. And guess what? He'll probably do a lot better the next time, as opposed to you just coming at him and telling him, "Oh, come on, you know better than that. You should have done this. You should have done that." Okay. So I think those things are really, really important to remember, that technology has its place. And depending on when and how it's used, it can be effective. But a lot of what they really need, both as a player and in life, are these things that don't involve technology. And we have to really be sure that they're getting that. And I think the balance between the two will get you more wins and championships, but more importantly, it'll teach them life skills that they can use, later on.
So wrapping up into this episode, I want to touch on one final question I have for you. And it's basically kind of like what we are in essence as a coach, right? We're trying to make our kids better. We're trying to help them access skills that they've never had ability to access before. So when you're considering, and this is something like you and I can touch on a lot, is when do you consider it appropriate to change a pitcher's mechanics, a hitter's swing, a catcher's approach, to the way he catches? When do you find that, when is it appropriate to do that, and what influences that decision?
Well, being a pitching coach, Cole, that's there's not much in sports more difficult than getting up on the mound, especially at a really young age, and trying to throw this ball over a 17-inch wide plate into a theoretically objective strike zone that we know is anything but objective. It's very subjective in the umpire's mind. Might even change inning to inning, and you're having to adapt to this strike zone. And I think parents should just be so proud of their son or daughter out there on a mound trying to pitch a game. The game doesn't start until they, put it in play, and they're out there with all the world looking at them. And this is really, really tough. So I think a certain amount of empathy has to happen in order for the player to feel comfortable with who you are and what you're trying to teach. They have to, even if you were a pitcher yourself, I think you still have to work really hard to show them that I get it. What you're trying to do is really, really tough. I know the umpire's squeezing you, and I'm not saying it's easy. So I think that you got to, again, connect with them on that personal level. I mean, it's almost not even fair nowadays, Cole, right? You and I watch these college and pro games, and the college players are so big, so strong, and they're still using aluminum bats. I mean, this is just stupid. A pitcher's out there grinding, throwing 95, 97, and these hitters, they only have to make 50 or 60% contact to hit home runs off an aluminum bat, right? Players, the same thing. They're just massive in their strength and their power. And I mean, I saw Shohei hit a home run yesterday. Oppo, like, he hit so many of them. I mean, it was basically a pop-up contact. I mean, it's like, I think he may have made 40% contact with this thing. He hit it 395 over the left center field wall. And it's just like, it's not even fair. So I think the whole empathy piece has to come first. Secondly, we'll just stay with pitching for a minute. There's so much information out there in baseball, especially about pitching and hitting. And unfortunately, much of it is just bad. It's just bad advice. They don't understand the biomechanics, the kinetics of pitching and hitting. And so the first bit of advice is make sure that what you're teaching is sound. Talk to a lot of people. Dare to be the dumbest guy in the room and listen and learn from a lot of people, a lot of different people who can help shape what you're teaching and why you're teaching it. So just be careful to, about what you're teaching, where you're getting your information was. So the other thing is make sure you're a really good teacher, that you're not just trying to make a change by telling somebody what it is they need to do. Coach is a verb. Uh, Make sure you're able to demonstrate it. Make sure you're able to illustrate it using something more than telling. Um, but, the first thing that has to happen before you can make a change is you have to have established the relationship with the player, that they know that you care about them, that it's not it's not defining who they are, and you've earned their trust, so that they'll adopt your philosophy and hear what you have to say. You've got to make that personal connection first. Yes, they must have a teachable spirit. They must have a growth mindset. They have to have a commitment to the process and being willing to learn. All of that is on them, but you've got to make that personal connection. And then they've got to do their part with the teachable spirit and the growth mindset. When it comes to that growth mindset and the willingness to learn, they have to understand, again, what it takes to be elite. They have to understand that a master has tried twice and failed many more times than the average person has even tried. All right. So, it takes a lot of trying, challenging, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and failing to even get to that point of being good. All right. I think coaches have to realize mechanically there are a lot of styles that can work. Most of it is relating to the body type of the pitcher, the length of their arm path, arm slot, size of their hands, what it feels comfortable. So I think you have to understand too, as a coach, the anatomy and biomechanics of each player. So you're not trying to fit every player into a, one size fits all thing. Although I do think that there are certain things that are non-negotiable, certain, fundamentals that have to be had. In pitching, if you're not solid in your front leg block, you're not going to throw strikes. You're just not. If there's not a sync in the way that your upper body moves with your lower body, things aren't going to go well. All right. Same thing in your hitting. If you don't know how to load your hip, if you're not transferring your weight properly, things aren't going to go well. All right. So I think coaches absolutely need to understand how to analyze a player from the ground up. I need to understand that faults and fixes are all about posture, balance, footwork, angles, rhythm, and timing. And so they need to be able to analyze that. When you can do all of that, then I think you can consider making a change. You've analyzed, you've connected with a person, you've analyzed the athlete, and now you've got good information. Now you can go and consider making a change. One of the most important things with making a change is time. Okay, how much time do I have to make this change? If it's the middle of the season and you're working with a young pitcher, to change something dramatically, or a hitter, may not be the right thing to do, because confidence is everything. Maybe you can get them to make a mental change, a mental adjustment, or a mental approach, change your visual, have your catchers set up a little more outside, and it may not be essential right then and there. Maybe the best thing to do, not to make a mechanical change. Just the mental approach will be enough to get the result, and will be better for them because it'll keep their confidence going. One of the worst things you can do is make a dramatic change in what they're doing mechanically in the middle of the season. It takes too long to have that change be made and have a consistent effect. So you got to be careful with the time of year and how much time you have to effectuate the change. Now, sometimes it's nothing more than changing a grip. You can do that. Hitting, throwing, whatever. But just make something major mechanical in the middle of the season, may not be the right thing to do. And for an older person, may even lead to an injury as a college or a pro to make something major. They're so big and strong and powerful that if you made a major change in the way they went about their pitching, it may lead to an injury over time. So you got to be careful there too about that. Um, and maybe finally, Cole, I think it's really important. This gets overlooked a lot. You know, as a pitching coach, Cole, that the way a pitch comes out of a pitcher's hand and looks coming to a hitter may be far more effective than what the metrics are saying. You hear hitters say all the time, you know what? The radar gun may have this guy at 90 miles an hour. All I can tell you, it feels and looks like 95, the way it comes out of his hand. His effective velocity is much different than his actual velocity. So I think coaches make a mistake by not standing in against their pitchers. Stand in as if you're a hitter. And I think hitters need to do this too. It really helps to stand in bullpens and see a lot of different pitchers and a lot of different arm angles and spin axes and things like that. But coaches need to stand in too, because they need to see their pitcher throw pitches and see what a hitter sees. Maybe this guy is throwing plenty hard because he's effective velocity is 3 to 5 miles an hour faster when it's coming to you as a hitter than what my radar gun is saying. All right. So I don't need to make a change to this guy. He's doing, maybe I'll just work on the mental approach or the art of pitching, and he's going to be just fine. I don't have to be so, especially in the middle of the season, I don't have to be so concerned about getting more velocity out of him. So I think standing in against a pitcher is a really often not used enough approach to making a change. So yeah, those are, same old person, athlete, player type of approach, Coach Cole. You've got to connect with the person. You've got to make sure you're analyzing the athletics. And then from a player's point of view, you can attack it, a lot if you have a lot of time and a player with the right mindset, or maybe not very much if you don't have those things. All right.
Right. 100%. Yeah, I feel like you're totally right on that. Like from my perspective as a pitching coach, like my one thing I would add on to that is, a lot of times it's not really like when you're working on a pitcher's delivery, a lot of times, to me at least, it's not the delivery, it's maybe some different cues that might be, more necessary. And for most of our guys, like, my guys that I work with, I'm not trying to change your delivery. I'm trying to make it more efficient, right? Some like you said, like everyone's gonna have a unique way of getting the same thing done. Like there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, right? But what's the most efficient way for that person to skin that cat and get the job done? Like you said, like you've got some key principles that you focus on as a coach. A couple of the key things I focus on are you extending too early in your back leg and killing all your power, and is your front leg soft, right? Or is it travel forward after it's landed, where you're killing all energy that you might have thrown into the ground and brought back up the chain? Like those are the two big things I really focus on, and as well as making sure your arm's on time in however we want to define what on time is. So those are like like you said, like those are probably my big three things that I look for. But other than that, a lot of it's just, are you efficiently getting the job done, as opposed to I have to overhaul your mechanics to fit into my bias of what quality pitching mechanics look like.
Yeah, I mean that's those kind of mechanical things for the player are huge. Understanding how the body moves and knowing how we've got to make sure that they're hitting certain points and stuff. All those are really, really true. I guess just from a coaching methodology point of view, before we get to that point, we just have to understand the players are going to hear and do what we want if we've made that personal connection with them. And sometimes their inability to stay solid on their front leg is not a sports skill thing. It's something we've got to hear in the athletic piece and in the gym. So yeah, I think that's what I'm saying. I think coaches sometimes just jump too quickly to the sport skill drill or piece, and they haven't considered the other ones. But you're absolutely right. There's certain things, certain cues, especially in the way we teach, that are huge. And probably one of the things I probably should have mentioned in the communication piece is the whole internal versus external cue thing. Not getting too caught up in internal cues, giving these guys external cues that can help them get the result that we wanted, so they don't get into their head too much. But yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that wraps up um, Coaching Champions for Life, the Player Edition. So next week we will have our 5th and final installment of the Champions for Life philosophy, where we'll talk about Champions for Life
Right.
leagues, right?
Yeah.
I believe that's what we have it it's titled. So make sure to check that out. Adam, if you want to do any plugs for people who haven't heard any of your plugs from the last episode, let's get everything plugged in here.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, that last piece is important because, especially at the youth baseball level, if the league's not bought into reinforcing, supporting, supervising, all of this stuff that we're trying to tell the coaches they need to do, it's not really going to do a lot of good, because year in and year out, the players are going to hear different things, and they're going to get different messages, some of it inconsistent messages, and they're not really going to be developed well. So there's some really important things that leagues need to do to support their coaches. And that's what that last one's going to be about. Thanks for allowing me to plug things. I'll just say this. I have coachingchampionsforlife.com. My 3 books are on there. I had 3 articles published today in different sports on coachesinsider.com. The ABCA's Inside Pitch magazine will have one of my articles coming out pretty soon. So there's a lot of different ways of getting the information from me, but most of it you can find on my website. And I really appreciate you allowing me to say that. It's all about getting the philosophy out there so that people and coaches can use it to help their players. So thank you very much.
So, all right, well, we'll see you all next week on our 5th and final installment. We hope you all have the good rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. As we close out this impactful 4th episode of our Champions for Life series on the Fast Performance Baseball podcast, we want to extend our deepest gratitude to you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey of discovery and insight. Today's conversation with Adam delved into the profound aspects of coaching beyond the game, offering strategies for imparting life lessons, fostering effective communication, and finding the perfect balance between embracing technology and preserving the essence of coaching. Before we part ways, I highly encourage you to explore further the wisdom and methodologies discussed today by checking out Adam's published works. His books, available on Amazon, are treasure troves of knowledge for anyone looking to deepen their understanding of baseball and life coaching. These resources are designed not just to enhance your skills on the field, but to enrich your approach to life's challenges and opportunities. We'll include the links in the episode description, making it easy for you to access the world of transformative content. Remember, your support through likes, shares, and subscriptions enables us to keep bringing you the best insights from the most knowledgeable figures in baseball and coaching. If today's episode has inspired you, please share it with someone who would benefit from these lessons, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content that bridges the gap between sports excellence and life mastery. Thank you once again for listening to the Fast Performance Baseball podcast. We're excited to bring you the final installment of the series, where we will continue to explore the principles that create not just great players, but truly remarkable individuals. Until then, keep striving for excellence on and off the field.